our forces. So, and then what is doable, let us not make it too difficult for COMELEC to monitor and verify 4 degrees relationship. It's very hard to determine. I mean, there are thousands of candidates, the prohibition. So as I said, since this is an exception to the rule, we have to make the exception clear and doable. So while it is good to cover everything, it may not be doable. So in my opinion, I join my students in that what is practical, reasonable, and fair is 2 degrees applicable, especially at provinces and cities and municipalities, Your Honors. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Attorney Monsod.
This sounds like the debates that go on during our Constitutional Commission. There are only about, what, eight of us left out of 48 or 9. But I do not, I'm sorry, I disagree with my colleague. The sample of one student class is not a valid basis for law. Why don't you run a survey, national survey, and ask national survey the same question? And I think that if you tell them, it means that the present congressman and the present government officials who are involved in the corruption can stay in office. And I'll tell you what the vote will be. Now, let me also one more point. Sorry, on what is doable in our country. It certainly is a lot of work for the COMELEC, but the COMELEC can do it. I was chairman of the COMELEC, and when I became a chairman, I went around the country and told the COMELEC, you are all Marcos appointees. I am not going to replace anybody. Everybody stays. You will do this ourselves, the first synchronized elections in our history. I only ask one gift of you: free, fair, and credible elections in 1992, which is the first synchronized elections in our country. And one COMELEC official stood up, I think it was in Cagayan, and he said, Sir, kami po ay isang ilog lang. Kung ang tubig po na nanggaling sa bukal ay malinis, malinis po kami. Kung ang tubig po na nanggaling sa bukal madumi, madumi din po kami. And he said, kayo po, malinis po ba kayo? I said, that's a very courageous question. But observe me next 3 months, and if you think I'm clean, will you deliver the gift to the people I'm asking you, all of you, and you have a reputation for knowing not to count, know how to count, and you're all Marcos appointees, but I'm asking that of you. Can you do it? And they did. They delivered on the 92 elections, the least number of protests, the least number of casualties.
The reason on record, and I think Chairman Monsod was the one who stated this, it was because kakagaling lang natin sa EDSA 1. We should be able to trust the Filipino people that they will choose, elect the right people. In fact, democratic choice as a general rule was the reason for those opposing any definition of anti-dynasty within the Constitution itself. But be that as it may, that is what is on record. That is what is stated in the deliberations, the records in the journals. If there was something that happened behind the scenes, hindi na natin malalaman po yun. And that is hearsay from my point of view. I can only rely on what I read, what is in the deliberations. So maliwanag po, tama yung kay Justice Ascuna. Sabi ni Justice Ascuna, the general rule is democratic choice. Ang pangalawa nito ay yung anti-dynasty. Andi dito ngayon tayo. Kanina narinig ko kasi, Mr. Chair, pinag-uusapan yung 4th civil degree. Sinabi, nag-cite ng napakaraming mga batas na ginawa natin. But again, let us disabuse the minds of the members of Congress. Lahat ng na-mention, appointive yun. When it came to elective position, second degree lang ang napasa ng Kongreso. That's the SK law. Hanggang second degree lang. Kaya sa totoo, we must be honest with each other. Gusto ba natin makapasa ng anti-dynasty law or ayaw? Kasi there are practical aspects talaga eh. Pag pinag-usapan natin ang fourth degree, so ano na po yun? Aabot na po yun pwedeng sa apo ng kapatid mo or something like that. Let's be honest, right now, meron mga probinsya dito, may mga syudad tayo sa Pilipinas na nag-aaway nga magkapatid eh. First cousins nag-aaway eh. And in that case, again let us disabuse the minds of people here. Tinanong kanina si Justice Carpio eh, kung about the fourth civil degree. Ang sagot ni Justice Carpio, again we can review the record. Sinabi niya, it is defensible. He did not say it was constitutional because that can still be questioned, yung fourth civil degree. So again, dun tayo sa kung gusto ba natin talaga, we should be practical. Let's take a look at all the scenarios. Ideal yung fourth, walang problema yon. Pero sa totoo ba, mapaplug ba natin lahat ng loopholes doon? Example, kanina narinig ko, may nagbanggit na nga, paano kung may long lost cousin? Paano kung meron ayaw lang manalo niya, yung uncle niya, di tatakbo siya. But then we have to think, ano ba? What is the evil that we seek to address? And the evil that we seek to address via a political dynasty, simple. Ayaw natin ng political patronage. That's it. Yun naman na ayaw natin, di ba? Kung sa totoo, hindi naman talaga napakaliit ng chances na magkaka-political patronage doon. So I ask of the members, it is good that we have here our experts, pero we've debated upon this several congresses already. Alam naman natin ang totoo. Alam natin ang totoo na we have been asked to pass a law. And again, disabuse the minds again. Hindi naman law lang to, batas lang to. And every law is subject to amendment, repeal, modification. So what is wrong if we go first for 2 degrees instead of the maximum 4 degrees? If it works, then we amend it in the future. Pero ang point is, let's pass something that is practicable, that can be done, na hindi masyadong mahirap even for the COMELEC. We had COMELEC here last committee hearing. Napakaraming problema sinabi sa atin ng COMELEC in order for them to be able to, even with the current sa SK lang. So again, we really have to settle amongst us. Gusto ba natin talaga ng batas o hindi? O nagpapakitang tao lang tayong lahat dito? Kasi iba-ibang version eh. And then the impracticable is again being forced on everybody. Wag na. Doon tayo sa practicable. In fact, Mr. Chair, if you will read the journals and the records, when it was defeated already, tinanong as an obiter lang tinanong yung proponent ano ba yung iniisip mo? Ang sagot po niya, in fact, was 1 degree succession. That's it.
Yes, dapat na.
So again, yun na nga, nahirapan pumasa yun gusto natin, mahaba pa, gusto pa natin, lahat nakapasok na doon. So again, let's be honest and answer this to the public. Kung pina-force ninyo ang imposible, ang hindi practicable, sinabi na rin sa atin ng COMELEC, hindi nila kaya, even to lengthen the period when we will be able to file, come on, that's not even going to be practicable enough. Doon na tayo sa practicable. Alam natin sino yung may influence. It's the mayor, the congressman, the senator, the president. Yun yung pagbawalan natin na makakasucceed sa kanya. And then when that succeeds, then we can pass an amendatory law later on kung gusto niya palawakin pa. But come on, let's be fair to the Filipino people kung yun ang gusto natin. It's just as good as very clear. The general rule is democratic choice. So kailangan siguraduhin naman natin na kung sisikipan natin, sana ay yung practicable lang. So Mr. Chair, I think I've heard everybody anyway. I just wanted to disabuse the minds of members who will be having a TWG, who will be voting on whatever committee report will be coming out. Na again, in this committee, kailangan seryoso tayo. Kailangan isipin natin ano talaga ang gusto. What is the evil that we seek to address? Again, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that, the manifestation, Congressman Roman Romulo. Before we call the next member to ask questions, I would like first to acknowledge the arrival of our members of this committee, the Vice Chair of the Higher and Technical Education from 3rd District Batangas, Representative King George Leandro Antonio Colliantes. Thank you, sir. Kanina lang po, we were also joined by the party list Pinoy Workers Representative Ligaspi Franz Vincent. Also, earlier, we were joined by Congressman Manuel Manman Co. From the party list Abang Lingkod. And of course, thank you very much, sir, for coming. At Congressman from party list Baco Bicol, Representative Alfredo Garbin. Maraming salamat po. May we now recognize Congressman Sheljok, no?
Maraming salamat, Chair. Magandang tanghali sa mga kasama ko sa Kongreso, sa ating mga bisita, at sa mga nanonood at nakikinig. Unang-una, ako ay nagagalak na sa posisyon ni Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio at former COMELEC Chair Christian Monsod. Sinabi nila na ang nire-recommend nila ay 4th degree of affinity
Malayo.
and consanguinity.
Degree
Yan
lang
din po
pala.
ang nasa loob ng aming House Bill 5905 sa Akbayan. Dahil naniniwala kami na kinakailangan talaga na maging mahigpit tayo pagdating sa mga political dynasties. At dalawa po ang tanong ko sa ating mga esteemed guests, especially kay Justice Carpio at kay Sir Attorney Monsod. Unang-una, why are you proposing the 4th degree of affinity or consanguinity rather than the 2nd or the 3rd? Second is, I've been thinking about, Mr. Chair, yung practicality of enforcement. And gusto ko rin sana makuha yung opinion ng ating mga bisita. What if we amend the SALN law and require as an additional disclosure that all government officials covered by SALN, which is pretty much all of us, include a family tree? And that will be it's not strict liability, but rather the standard of the legal standard of diligence that we apply, which could be ordinary diligence. That way, we could cover all the bases. Ang pag-file ng isang kandidato, sasabihin niya, wala po akong ibang kasama na sa pamilya within the 4th degree. At matcha-check natin po yan sa kanyang SALN. That is also, to me, a good way of detecting conflict of interest. Kasi kung alam ng lahat, dapat nga i-publish natin ang SALN. Kita na nila kung sino yung mga kapamilya ng isang opisyal ng ating pamahalaan. Then kung ipapabaran sila, very clear that that would be a violation of our Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act law. So may I hear from former Senior Associate Justice Carpio and our former COMELEC Chair Monsod on that point about why are you recommending 4th degree of affinity or consanguinity, and would you be in favor of including that kind of disclosure in our SALN law? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Justice Carpio.
Yes, because in fact, the Code of Conduct for Government Employees prohibit divesting within 4th degree. And in fact, there's a provision there that you must disclose within 4th degree because you're not supposed to give favors to relatives within the 4th degree. So the best way to find out who are these people is for the government official to list down in the SALN. That's why it's also required in the SALN. For the judiciary, nakatalagay doon, who are your relatives with the 4th degree within the judiciary. You can amend it to say within the entire government so that you will have a database. Right now, it's only within the judiciary. Thank you.
Attorney Munsod, sir. Chairman Munsod.
Yeah, well, I propose 4 degrees because of the situation in our country today. We don't have a democracy today in our country. And I think that it's time we went back to our beginnings and say, what steps do we want to take in order for us to really go back to our beginnings when we promised a new social order to the poor. Every administration failed in that. So I'm just saying, this is just one of the things that we should think about. And that's 4 degree. There are others. I can tell you that I'm really a little disappointed in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court appointed by President Duterte. There are 11 of them now. What are the decisions? Have you read the decisions? We put in the Constitution that the Supreme Court has the power to determine sufficiency of factual basis for declaring martial law. Did the Supreme Court do that in the martial law that was declared twice in Mindanao? No. They deferred to the President and said that the President is the one who gets the right information and therefore we should defer to that. How did they decide on Derima? No bail, 7 years detention. How did they decide on Sereno? Not firing a son. When Judicial and Bar Council submitted her name for consideration as a member, they already put that there, and she was still appointed. The Constitution says that any citizen can ask on the state of the President's health. We tried to do that. No answer. Constitution says that the sum should be available to the citizens because precisely we want to know how a government official earned anything during his term, right? What did the ombudsman say? He locked up all the sum. Not a single one has been shown to the people. That is happening in our country today, and the feudalistic system of dynastic clans is one of the problems in our country. It is a source of corruption. You know, we had before. I have a long paper here when we had the pork barrel of starting in 1989. It was going this way. It went up during Marcos' time, and then it went down. Cory, it went up again, and now it's up again at the same level. Marcos Jr. is at the same level of Marcos Sr. in corruption. I think this is just part of what I think we should be doing to try to put our democracy back on track. If it doesn't pass, fine. Then at least there will be 2. But I hope that there will be at least 2 degrees. And then we go to all the other problems and solve them one by one. Economy, what? 4.4% into 2025. What was the target? 5.5%, 6%. Why? The excuse was corruption. It was not. It was inefficiency. If you study it, in other words, we have so many of these problems. And I think that one of the first things we should do is totally dismantle the dynastic clans in order to start working on the country.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank you.
Congressman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No more questions. May I just request that my former colleague at the De La Salle, July Tihanki, submit a paper on the dynasty laws in Latin America that you mentioned earlier. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's already, actually, that was already requested from Professor Tengi. Thank you. This is a working lunch, so I know this topic is very important. So is feeding yourself. So
Feeding
huwag niyo po
yourself.
kalimutan. So we go next to the member who would like to ask questions from the majority, Representative Santos.
Good morning. Good afternoon na po pala, Mr. Chair. Ako po si Representative Santos from Las Piñas City. I don't know if you will consider me a step towards anti-dynasty. But kanina po pinagtatalunan natin. Before anything else, I would like to thank, of course, our distinguished guest here, ang mga tinitingala sa paggawa ng batas at ang gumawa ng konstitusyon ay nandito. Although we have different opinions, at the end of the day siguro ako I'm very hopeful po na may ipapasa itong anti-dynasty law. Kanina po, tinatanong natin kung ano ba ang magiging template natin dito sa batas na ito. And I'm not sure, this is the second time I attended this hearing. By the way, I also sponsored an anti-dynasty bill. Sinasabi natin yung ibang bansa at baka nakakalimutan po natin. Yung pong sangguniang kabataan, SK Reform Act RA 10742, dinidisqualify po ang isang kandidato sa sangguniang kabataan within the second degree of consanguinity kung siya ay may kamag-anak doon sa barangay na kanyang tinitirahan. I'm not sure if na-consider po ito ng committee. But for me, para po maipasa to, pwede po nating i-consider to. In fact, pwede po nating i-copy-paste ito. Kasi kung walang katapusan pong pagtatalo ang gagawin natin dito, ay tingin ko po, hindi natin masosolve ang problema
pasahan nyo
natin
na yan.
ng ating bansa. Number one, marami pong pag-aaral at mga surveys. Ang pinakamalaking tatlong problema ng ating bansa ngayon. Number one, ang oligarchy. Number two, ang regulatory capture na sinasabi. At number three, ang political dynasty. At sana po, magsama-sama po tayo dito. Maipasa po ang batas na ito. At ako po naniniwala sa darating na halalan sa 2028, ang taong bayan po ang magdidesisyon tungkol sa batas na ito. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair.
Maraming salamat, Representative Santos, for your manifestation. Now we recognize Representative Sara Ilago from Gabriela Party List.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair. Ang representasyon po na ito mula sa Gabriela Women's Party ay isa rin sa may akda ng tinatalakay natin ng mga measures ngayong araw, lalong-lalo na doon sa pagbabawal hanggang sa 4th degree of consanguinity and affinity ng sabay-sabay at sunod-sunod sa lahat ng national at local elective positions. Ngayon ho, nais ko rin magkaroon ng paglilinaw at pagsusuri tungkol naman doon sa epekto sa ekonomiya at pang-araw-araw na buhay ng ating mamamayan ng mga political dynasties. Lalong-lalo na kapag kami po ay nagkakaroon ng konsultahan sa iba't ibang sektor, lalong-lalo na sa mga maralita, yung issue ng sahod, issue ng presyo ng mga bilihin, nakikita nila yung mismong epekto ng mga desisyon ng kanilang mga naihalal na opisyal pagdating sa ganitong napakahalagang usapin. Kaya nga ho, nakita ko at kasama rin natin dito ngayong araw, ang isa sa ating mga resource person, though hindi ko na po siya makita dito sa ating hall ngayon, we're also joined by Professor and economist, Professor Noel Leco. And I'd like to ask him about the impact of political dynasties on the national and local economy. Pero Mr. Chair, pwedeng balikan ko na lang po yun. Pagkabalik po ng ating resource speaker. Nais ko po munang marinig din yung pahayag ng Babae para sa Inang Bayan o BIBA. Ito po ay grupo ng mga kababaihan na nag-raise din ng concern sa impact ng political dynasties sa political participation naman ng mga kababaihan, lalong-lalo na yung mga nanggaling sa marginalized sectors.
Thank you.
Let us hear from BIBA, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sorry, hindi ka dapat na-acknowledge na Miss Maria Fabella Fajardo from Babae para sa Inang Bayan. Thank you, ma'am. Yes po. Please respond to the question. May question po kayo, no, Congresswoman Lago.
Mr. Chair, nais po natin marinig yung kanilang posisyon sa issue na ito dahil batay po sa information na binigay ng committee na ito, sila ay nanggaling sa mga kababaihan mula sa iba't ibang sektor. Sa professional, meron sa academe, meron din po sa hanay ng mga marginalized sectors.
Yes, ma'am, how long is your presentation po?
2 minutes po.
Sige, okay.
Sige po.
Let's proceed.
Magandang araw po. Ito po yung posisyon ng Babae para sa Inang Bayan on the political dynasty bills in the House of Representatives. Babae para sa Inang Bayan o BIBA calls on the House of Representatives to turn its rhetoric against political dynasties into concrete action by immediately passing a genuine and anti-political dynasty law, taxpayers whose hard-earned money funds the very government being monopolized by few families. For decades, dynastic rule has blocked the emergence of new people-oriented leaders and parties that truly represent the interests of ordinary Filipinos, especially women. BIBA firmly supports the Makabayan Bloc's House Bill 209 and other bills that prohibit those related to an incumbent within the fourth degree of consanguinity or affinity to run or hold offices at all levels. These bills, BIBA believes, faithfully seek to define and prohibit political dynasties in accordance with the 1987 Constitution. If the Speaker and House leadership are serious about ending political dynasties, the next step is clear. Pass the pending bills that will finally give life to the long-ignored constitutional ban on dynasties. Political dynasties have long undermined genuine democracy, accountability, and meaningful people's participation in governance. With a limited number of elective positions in government and with traditional politicians constantly seeking to expand their family control over power, a weak or selective ban, one that targets only so-called morbidly obese dynasties, will only benefit existing thin, fat, and obese dynasties. In fact, such anti-dynasty bills will allow thin dynasties to multiply and eventually grow into fat or obese ones themselves. Under these proposals, it will still be the same families who divide among themselves the allocables and unprogrammed appropriations, especially those with close ties to the president. It will still be the same political clans who conspire to rig public works procurement, cut down social aid, and protect one another's anomalies. Power remains concentrated, corruption remains systematized, and accountability remains impossible. We also see how dynasties use barangay positions as a convenient starting point, pretending to gain grassroots experience while already laying the groundwork for family rule in their towns and cities. Barangay posts are weaponized to sell communities as sure votes to traditional parties and campaign donors, further entrenching elite control over local governance. As Filipino women, we stress that political dynasties have entrenched inequality in both power and wealth. A few families dominate local and national politics, while women, workers, farmers, students, mothers, and the urban and rural poor are pushed out of decision-making. We pay public officials to serve the people. Demanding high standards from them is neither foolish nor excessive. It is our democratic right. Every day that political dynasties remain in power is another day of suffering for Filipino women. We endure low wages, workplace exploitation, relentless price hikes, and chronic underfunding for VAUSI services, healthcare, education, and other basic social services. Meanwhile, political dynasties continue to drain public funds through unprogrammed appropriations, over 25% allocables, and centralized kickback systems in government projects. We pay public officials through our taxes to serve the people. Therefore, imposing high standards on those who seek and hold public office is not perfectionism. It is our right as taxpayers and citizens. BIBA stands for a democratic political space that advances women's political participation and leadership alongside broader reforms to dismantle elite rule. A real anti-political dynasty law is not optional. It is essential if we are to break the cycle of corruption, exclusion, and poverty that continues to burden Filipino women and the nation as a whole. Yun po yung posisyon namin. Salamat po.
Maraming salamat. Yes,
Mr. Chair.
Congressman Manila.
Batay dun sa posisyon ng babae para sa inang bayan, nais ko na hong matanong si Professor Leco, who's back here in this committee hearing. Nabanggit po yung epekto ng political dynasty sa konsentrasyon ng yaman, sa kahirapan at sa hindi pagkapantay-pantay. May we know the current assessment of Professor Leco on the impact of political dynasties on the national and local economy?
Thank you. Unang-una po, nagpapasalamat po kami sa paanyaya sa committee na to. We thank the Honorable Chairman and the members of the committee for having us from the Center for People Empowerment in Governance. Having been an academic for more than 2 decades, I would like to take off from the point of view of, well, this would be different from what we have been hearing from before. And I'd like to offer this point of view to enhance the previous positions or previous position papers that have been shared on the economic impact of political dynasties. The question that we'd like to pursue here is that the Philippines live in a fair free market environment. Is a fair free market environment congruent with the environment that is dominated by political dynasties? Does political dynasty encourage or stifle fair and free market environment? Major considerations when investors go into business is that political stability. I think you must have heard of the news, the 4.4 economic growth rate. People are saying that this was a result of an eroded political confidence or confidence of the households. And I think you can further understand this when we look at the components of our GDP. A major component that slowed down was household consumption. In addition to the public spending, which definitely slowed down, household consumption really slowed down. And together, public spending and household consumption slowing down brought our economic growth rate to just 4.4%, which was very far from the already reduced growth rate target of the government of 5.5%. We did not even make 5%. Therefore, political stability is a major concern. When it is considered, people look at our political structure and they will see families and they will consider, they will ask questions. Would this family continue to be in power? What happens if they are disrupted? What happens if another family wins the elections? Would policies continue to be consistent, or would policies be consistent insofar as promoting fairness, transparency, and promoting fair competition through regulation? And what if the current environment is dominated by big businesses, the oligarchs? Would the policies encourage promotion of small and medium enterprises? The political economy is a major consideration. Who are the dominant parties? Traditionally, we look at that in business. when we do our economic mapping, we also consider the political map. Who are the political parties or members of the political parties that are incumbent, and how much vote did they receive from the previous election? In the Philippines, we look at which families, which names are considered dominant in our political lives. Our economic agenda.
Sir,
Determined.
I'm sorry to cut you off, sir. I
Opo.
think the question is to go directly to the effects of anti-political dynasty. May we require na lang sana if you can go give Congresswoman Ilago,
Opo.
if you have figures, exact figures, what are the effects of anti-political dynasty? I'm sure your presentation is very, very important, but we are pressed with time also. We will be holding the hearing, and there are a lot of members who would also ask questions to our other guests. So if you can go through yung point, kung ano po yung naging, ang tanong po is ano yung naging epekto nito, political dynasty. If you have the figures, yung economic...
Just to go directly to the point, given the numbers that we saw in the last GDP growth rate by the Philippine Statistics Authority, I think it is not far from making a decision that we need to jumpstart the economy. In fact, kickstart the economy, and the passing of the anti-political dynasty could provide the impetus, the stimulus for further economic growth rate. Yun lamang po. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po. You have further question, Congresswoman Ilago?
None so far, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
but we'd like to ask po a written
Yes.
submission
Yeah,
from
please.
Professor Leco to guide this committee further.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Can you submit to us your study po?
Yes, we will.
So, maraming salamat po. So next to ask question is former Secretary of the Department of Justice and former Senator Congresswoman Laila De Lima.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to our esteemed...
I'm sorry. Sorry po. Sorry. I'm so sorry, Congresswoman De Lima. Si Renny po, sorry pero maganda po yung introduction ko sa inyo. At least, so Congressman, we will after po kay Congressman Rene. Pasensya na po, Ma'am Laila. Thank you. Congressman Rene from Akbayan Party List. I'm sorry. Kabataan. Party List, kailangan ko mag-lunch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our resource speakers that are present today and continuing this discussion. Besides being the representative of Kabataan, kami rin po ay authors ng House Bill 209. Ito po yung unang anti-political dynasty bill, the final this 20th Congress. And likewise, yung napag-usapan po natin today, yun po yung laman ng ating bill. Fourth degree of consanguinity and affinity, yung limitation, both successive and simultaneous, yung limitations na nilalagay niya. And meron din po doong rules na ini-introduce such as yung declaration ng hindi po part ng political dynasty, etc., that should be part of the certificate of candidacy so as to help solve and help assist COMELEC doon sa kaya niyang gawin para maaktuhan yung pag-implement ng anti-political dynasty provisions. I'd just like to manifest very briefly that I think for the youth today, wala nang nagwo-wonder kung ano ang political dynasty. Sure, the breadth and the dimensions of that definition is something that Congress will have to create, and yun nga po yung burden ng committee na to. Pero kung tatanungin niyo po yung lay person, yung kahit sinong kabataan on the street ngayon, kung anong political dynasty, they have a clear conception kung ano siya. And they have a clear conception also kung ano po yung epekto nito sa buhay namin. And I think this is different from when I was younger, na I was 10 or 13, ganyan, na parang nagsisimula pa lang din, maging mas popular yung discussions on political dynasty. Now, it is prevalent sa araw-araw na discussion ng kabataan. And I'd like to give some emphasis ngayon na can you please imagine the generation-wide disappointment nang nakalagay daw sa Constitution na prohibited ang political dynasties. Pero for so long, ito ang reality ng kabataan. Na nararamdaman yung epekto, masamang epekto ng for further consolidation of political power in the hands of only a few and depriving the youth of these opportunities to be able to be part of political participation through elective positions. No? So, gusto ko lang pong i-register yon, and I'd like to, put front and center yung mga nagiging biktima ng further political consolidation, which is of the youth. So today po we're tackling quote-unquote constitutional risks, no? Yung if we create this or if we finally legislate this prohibition on political dynasties as is the constitutional command, ano raw yung effects nito on other aspects of the constitution or even yung quote-unquote rights and freedoms ng mga tao. I'd like to pose 3 questions, especially those that were present in the committee hearing last week or 2 weeks ago. Meron po dito today that discussed more comprehensively yung gantong klaseng anxieties. And then number 2, of course, the legal luminaries here today and our framers. So number 1 po, meron pong nagsasabi that there is a violation of equal protection and due process clause because may prohibition from running. Ano po yung insights nyo dito? Because ba na merong ban, and then this ban would I assume limit the certain freedoms of individuals from running, na part sila ng dynasties. Is there a violation of equal protection and due process? I heard some arguments that said that you have to may weighing na gagawin, yung kapakanan ng taong bayan as per yung manifestation ni framer Christian Monsod versus yung ano yung consequences quote unquote ito sa dynasties. Number 2, meron pong nag-bring up sa last meeting yung right to suffrage, Mr. Chair. So ano po ba yung nakikita? May epekto ba? And bahagi ba ng discussion ng prohibition of political dynasties ng right to suffrage? Meron bang right to suffrage violation when individuals who vote can no longer vote for candidates that could run because part sila ng political dynasties? Bahagi ba yan ng legal conception? Or meron po bang maanak na karapatan yung right to suffrage na in relation sa kakayahang tumakbo ng isang tao? And then lastly po, ano po ba yung appreciation natin sa public office? Sa amin po sa law school, ganyan, sa law, there is no proprietary right to public office. Hindi po siya property right. May karapatan ba na tumakbo? Ito ba ay anak ng right to suffrage? Ano yung individual limitation, quote unquote, that kailangang i-consider or pag-usapan, i-lay out na sa floor if meron man, kung may ganito. Siguro po I'm interested in the insights of Attorney Nery Colmenares kasi medyo bahagi po ito ng kanyang speech, and then of course sa legal luminaries here present today, Justice Antonio Carpio, if Justice Ascuna is still here, and maybe ayun po si Prof. Tihanki, framer Christian Monsod, kung meron po sila. Thank you po.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, first question, is there a right to run? Yes, it's not a proprietary right. As early as, in fact, in the case of Cornejo versus Gabriel, way back in 1927, the Supreme Court said, public office is not a proprietary right. Sinabi na ng Korte Suprema, wala kang hereditary or proprietary rights dyan. It was reiterated in the case of Monteclaros versus Comelec, where the Supreme Court said that public office is not a matter of right na in relation to the due process clause ng konstitusyon. Na pag na-deprive ka ng, it's not a property na pag na-deprive ka nun, parang na-deprive ka ng property. In fact, the Supreme Court there said that it's not even an expected right to a public office, kahit expectancy. Ibig sabihin, tumatakbo ka, hindi yan daw violation ng konstitusyon. Now, in the second question about this violate the right to suffrage of the candidates, the answer is no. I just mentioned the decisions of the court. Does it violate the right of the people to vote for candidates they want to. Well, actually, the right to suffrage, as mentioned by Justice Ascuna kanina, is the general rule, the choice of the people, right to suffrage. But the Constitution itself imposed certain qualifications and limitations to the right of suffrage of the people. In fact, the Congress, because the definition of the right to suffrage under the Constitution, by law can even prohibit a certain voter from voting, depending on convict ba siya, etc., di ba? So, in that sense, it doesn't go against the Constitution pag ilimit mo yung right to suffrage. For example, the people have the right to choice kung sino man gusto niyang iboto. But the Constitution said you cannot vote for the incumbent president in the next election. Because the Constitution said one term lang. Di ba? Under the Constitution, for example, it says any person convicted on an impeachment trial not only is removed from office, but also perpetual disqualification. So, pag na-impeach na, convict na sa impeachment yung isang public official, under the Constitution, that official can no longer run and hold public office and, because they're disqualified. So, ibig sabihin, does that limit the freedom of choice of the people and the right to suffrage? In a sense, yes. But the Constitution specifically limited it. And that is the case, of course, of the political dynasties here. So, in the end, can it be challenged on the grounds of equal protection? Well, of course, anybody can challenge anything. But I believe that an anti-dynasty law will survive an equal protection challenge. Why? Because in the first place, the Constitution mandates it. And the Constitution cannot, a constitutional provision cannot be declared unconstitutional because it conflicts with another, di ba? So for me, the specific provision on anti-dynasty law trumps the general rule on people's right to suffrage, because this is specific to the dynasty law. Secondly, of course, the Supreme Court has ruled in so many cases, Victorino versus Elizalde Rope, which was taught to us all in law school, that there is a valid or reasonable classification. May mga apat lang naman na elements yan. Sabi ng ating constitutional law professor, there must be substantial distinction. Is there a substantial distinction between a dynastic candidate and a non-dynastic candidate? Of course, yes. Marami ng they have the advantage of incumbency, they have the advantage of resources, and so on. I don't need to iba, pag challenger ka, may problema ka talaga pag dynasty yung kalaban mo. So there is a substantial distinction even as to impact, not to mention electoral participation. Second, is it germane to the purpose of the law? Well, the purpose of the law is clear in the Constitution. Kasi may impact sa social justice ang dynasty. Therefore, ang purpose ng gobyerno, the state's purpose, is to eliminate that hindrance to the achievement of social justice and equal representation and so on. Is that a legitimate purpose of government? Of course, yes. It's merely implementing. Will the law be germane to that purpose? Of course, yes. When the law says hindi pwedeng tumakbo yung fourth degree of consanguinity or affinity, it's part of that purpose. And the third, it should not be limited. It should be equally applied to all class, of course. Siyempre, hindi naman pwedeng paboran mo yung isang dynasty. Tatakbo siya yung iba, hindi mo paboran. It will apply to all class and it's not limited to the specific conditions. That's the fourth. And I think even this will hurdle that equal protection challenge. Bakit? Hindi lang naman ito sinasabi na in a particular class or a particular situation. It will apply to the next elections. So this is not really, for me, it fulfills the Supreme Court elements required for a law to be that. Last point, the Congress has actually passed a law actually limiting the right to suffrage of the people. Omnibus Election Code, Section 12. Pag ikaw ay ng moral turpitude, na convict ka for moral turpitude, hindi ka na pwedeng tumakbo, di ba? O pag ikaw ay, of course, if a competent court declares you insane, sabi ng batas ng Congress, all these things limit the right to suffrage of the people, but the Constitution grants Congress the plenary power to do it. And sa akin, valid classification means na hindi talaga mapigilan ang anti-dynasty law on the basis ng challenge on equal protection. Especially since public office and the running for public office is not a proprietary right that violates due process clause. Salamat po.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If there are other resource persons who would like to expound further, pero sa bahagi ko, naging clear na po sa akin, no, yung balancing, no, and I think because for so long hindi pa nababalance yung scale in favor of a prohibition, no, a lot of the discussions we have, no, albeit syempre yung mga concerns na to ay valid, may bahagi talagang hypothetical, di pa talaga natin na-apply. Yun po, Chair, if there are others who would also like to add. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Justice Carpio.
Yeah, so we are discussing now what are the limitations on the power of Congress to define a political dynasty, because that definition will limit the holding of public office. Well, I think the limit really is the president's power to appoint, because that's a limitation on holding public office. Fourth degree, up to fourth degree is allowed. So, if you look at elective position, it should correspond. That will be the maximum. You are safe, constitutionally safe, if you are within that. I'm not saying that beyond fourth, if you say fifth degree, that will be declared automatically unconstitutional. But I'm saying fourth degree is very safe. I don't think it will be declared unconstitutional, because that's already in the law, in the Constitution itself, as a limitation on holding public office. This is a limitation on public office. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Carpio. Yes, Congresswoman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a last manifestation, if there are no other that would like to add po. Sa bahagi ko po, I think very clear na kung itatahi ko po yung...
I think si Justice Escuna also would like to respond.
Thank you po, Justice Escuna.
Thank you, Your Honors. I think I agree with Justice Carpio that if Congress decides to put it at fourth degree, I think that is also constitutional. I only point out that it might be difficult to implement on the part of the COMELEC, and however, that is to be decided by Congress, and I think it's still reasonable. They are pushing the limits, I think, at fourth degree, but it's still allowable. Beyond that, I think might be overreach.
Thank you, Justice Escuna. Ano?
Okay,
Thank you.
Last na lang po.
Yeah, okay.
Kung itatagpi ko po yung naging manifestation ni Constitutional Commission Framer Christian Monsod, na sabi niya, pwede po namang magsimula tayo sa fourth. Tapos, ibaba natin, no, if makita nating successful na or mas naging mature yung political democracy with the reassurances of our legal luminaries that a fourth degree limitation is constitutional, no, is acceptable within the defines of the law. It's not overbroad. Yun po yung ifino-forward ko na step forward po ng committee, no? And with due respect to my colleagues, I don't think hindi po natin pinipuwersa yung imposible with that. Lalo na kung ang finding sa buong mundo ay overrun by political dynasties yung public office in the Philippines. Number 1 in the whole world. And no matter how you look at it and you pierce different perspectives, may epekto yan sa kung paano minamanage ang national economy, ang local economy, paano nagpapasa ng mga policies, how it can favor families, business of families, and na-shut out po yung mas maraming mamamayan na hindi naman po bahagi ng mga pamilya na to from opportunities of public service or even no opportunities in private, no, whether it's kung paano kukuha ng trabaho, etc. Lahat po yan ay may epekto. So I think, Mr. Chair, last manifestation, it's very urgent na sa batas na po tayo ng anti-political dynasty measure. No, hinihintay po ng kabataan ito for so long. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Maraming salamat, Congresswoman Ko, for that manifestation. Now, pasensya na po kanina. Finally, Congresswoman Laila De Lima of ML
Thank you,
Party
Mr.
List.
Chair, and again, good afternoon to my colleagues and our esteemed resource speakers. Actually, a couple of my points, the points that I wanted to raise, have been covered already, tackled already by the questioning of Representative Reneco. So I wish to focus on two more points. I need this representation needs a validation from our esteemed resource persons as to the fact that Congress has no choice, Congress has no discretion but to pass an anti-dynasty law. As former Senior Associate Justice Tony Carpio said, the Constitution commands the enactment of a law prohibiting political dynasty. I wanted to raise that. I'm saying that because to my surprise, I heard one or two of our colleagues earlier about, that can be questioned. Can we be forced to do it? No. I mean, yes, we are being forced by the Constitution. In fact, there are pending petitions for mandamus to compel the House of Representatives to enact already an anti-political dynasty bill. So we cannot wait for the Supreme Court to do it. And the Supreme Court, if it has to do it, I think will issue a favorable ruling on that, because the law is very clear that Congress must act. Prohibits political dynasties as may be defined by law. How can we prohibit political dynasties not yet defined under the Constitution, and the provision is not self-executing without a law, a specific law from Congress? So the validation, I wish to seek validation from our esteemed resource speakers. Congress is without discretionary authority to pass an anti-political dynasty law. And anyone from the resource speakers can
Chairman Monsod?
I just want to ask a question of ourselves. Do we want a real democracy in this country? And do you think it is a real democracy if there are dynastic clans? There's none.
Correct.
So when we say, well, maybe we can have only 2 degrees, then you still have the problem. But, I mean, how come other countries can do it? Go to Europe, go to the United States. Of course, United States have other problems today, but go to the European countries who have this. We want a real democracy, and to have a real democracy, we have to demolish. The feudalistic system of dynasties.
I think my just want to very brief lang po manifestation also on that. I think we all agree that the anti-political dynasty is not a standalone solution to all the problems that we have.
Yes.
It should be paired with, number one, strengthening political system, party system. So I think we all agree na hindi lang po yun ang problema. Kailangan magkakaroon din po tayo ng mas malawakang comprehensive review sa lahat po ng batas. Unang-una, talagang palakasin po natin ang party and political system sa bansa natin. Unang-una, dapat walang turncoatism. Dapat yun po ang unang-una din po natin ma-address. Thank you, Justice Carpio.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Isang Bayan filed a petition before the Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court to issue a mandamus to Congress to enact an anti-political dynasty law. But it is up to Congress to define what is that anti-political dynasty law. But it is the duty of Congress to pass an anti-political dynasty law because the Constitution is clear. The state shall prohibit. So it's been 38 years now, and it has not been prohibited. So we understand in the previous decision, the Supreme Court said that we don't have, we cannot, it's up to Congress to pass that law. But I think that so much time has passed that we have to now comply with the Constitution because this has spawned so many problems, and there is a change of there is a change of circumstances. We have witnessed how Congress, because of political dynasties, have dominated have crafted the annual budget. So there is a clamor from the people to pass this law already. So I think it might happen. I'm not saying it will, but I think it could happen that the Supreme Court will say, Congress, you now pass that law. We're not saying what kind of law, but you have to pass it now. It's been overdue. So that's why we went to the Supreme Court. And it will still be within the Constitution because it's mandatory really for Congress to pass that law. And I'm happy that it's being discussed now. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Carpio.
Thank you. In relation to that, so these are petitions for mandamus, because if I'm not mistaken, there are 3 or 4 petitions for mandamus, including the one filed by Isambayan. Since it's a petition for mandamus, it's confined only to compelling Congress to enact an anti-political dynasty law on the basic theory that Congress' duty is actually ministerial and mandatory. Now, is it possible that beyond compelling or directing or ordering Congress to enact now an anti-political dynasty law, the Supreme Court would deem it fit to already set the parameters of the law to be enacted by Congress? We know that there have been cases of judicial legislation. So could this be one?
Well, I would be the first to say that the Supreme Court should not legislate. The Supreme Court should just say, you, Congress, you pass the law now, whatever law you want. That's why we in Sambayan, we are conducting a parallel move. In case Congress does not still pass that law, we have an alternative, a people's initiative. It's difficult, but that's the only other alternative really if Congress refuses. Thank you.
Interject lang po, Kundas. Just an innocent lang po. A question lang po, no? I think we all do understand, no? It doesn't take one to be a lawyer to understand that there's an exclusive power in separation of powers among these 3 branches of government: judiciary, legislature. Legislature, our business really is to legislate. May question lang po ako, Justice Carpio. For example, can the Supreme Court dictate upon Congress not only the law that is to be passed, but the timeline by which Congress should enact? Would that constitute encroachment or violation of the separation of powers? Since the power to legislate entirely is within Congress, that would also include not only the type of law or type of bills that are to be enacted or passed, but including the timeline by which Congress has this discretion to enact such measures.
The timeline, that's why the Supreme Court in the previous cases said it's up to Congress, because the way the Supreme Court looked at it, give Congress enough time. But almost 38 years, 39 years already, almost 4 decades already, and it's more than enough time. I mean, 4 decades, that means Congress refuses to enact. It's already a refusal to enact. So that's why we went to the Supreme Court and said, this is too much already. This is unreasonable, grave abuse of discretion already. Because there is that provision in the Constitution that the Supreme Court in case there is grave abuse of discretion on the part of the executive or the legislature, can strike down or order the legislature or the president to perform an act. So we're saying it's now a grave abuse of discretion because it's almost 4 decades already. It amounts to refusal to do a constitutional duty. I hope that the Supreme Court will see it that way, but we have a fallback. If the Supreme Court does not see it that way, we will have our people's initiative. It's very difficult, but there's no other way.
So your petition po, sir, is still pending before the Supreme Court. It has not been responded to.
No, wala pa.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Congressman Dilima. Thank you.
Thank you. The next point is, okay, there are 20 pending bills, anti-political.
22.
Naging 22 na po.
Meron po.
Last time it was
Tumabo.
19, it became 20, and now it's 22. So there are 22 pending anti-political dynasty bill. And based on the discussions since the first hearing, and this is only the second hearing, correct? This is only the second hearing. I have yet to see anyone, any colleague, any member of the committee opposing any of those anti-political dynasty bill. I have yet also to hear from any of our resource persons opposing the anti-political dynasty bill. Although
Well, I heard one now, but they're not necessarily opposing, but
just qualified.
yeah, he said it's not really the problem, the political.
Correct.
dynasty.
We are referring, of course, to Professor
Carlos.
It was a qualified answer, actually. She says, if I remember correctly,
Essentially, she was not
absent any genuine political party reform or electoral reform actions, then we have to ban political dynasty. We need to pass anti-political dynasty law. Okay, so the real challenge for us is how to pass an ideal anti-political dynasty law. And being ideal is not necessarily pragmatic, practical, or fair. So that's why we have issues on the second degree, third degree, or fourth degree. And then after that, we have also issues on succession. Although, of course, the ideal, and I think it's not difficult to get the consensus of the majority, the ideal is there should not be a succession. Dapat nagkakaroon ng break. And then the third issue would be the issue on the simultaneous holding of positions. How many positions can be simultaneously held by members of the same family? Would it be one national, one local, isa lang? Or the very strict version is about prohibiting, meaning only one from the same family, irrespective of the position, whether it's national or local. Dapat ganun lang daw. Bawal na yung iba up to the fourth degree of consanguinity and affinity. And then, kung isang national, isang local, or isang national, dalawang local. And then, how about considering the various levels of the local government unit positions? And then the geographical location. Pwede bang ipagbawal lang natin, okay, isang national lang, pero isa lang dapat within the same province, or within the same legislative district, or within the same city or municipality. Those would be harder to thresh out, more than, in my view, more than the issue whether it's second degree or fourth degree. We can easily justify it. Although my version, as I manifested during the last hearing, my version, House Bill 2131, is up to second degree. But I'm open to modifying it, adjusting it to fourth degree. After listening to some resource persons in favor of extending it to fourth degree, I am more or less convinced that it should be, we can have it fourth degree. Kasi ang problema po, kung sasabihin natin, okay, para madali, yung mas acceptable. Kung ano yung mas acceptable? Because, in fact, among at least the 19 bills that I knew, I didn't know about the others, the 22 na pala. The more than 19 bills that I scrutinized, 11 are for second degree. 7 are for fourth degree, and there's only one for third degree. But I'm convinced that, okay, kung sasabihin natin para mas madali, since karamihan naman ng mga bills are for second degree, it's easier to pass. Ang problema natin later, it can easily be circumvented na kapag dyan lang, dun lang sa second degree, and yet it can easily be passed on sa mga uncles, aunts, and also sa mga pinsan. So, there's a false hope that we're going to generate from the electorate, from the people. Bigyan nyo na ng chance. Let us give it a chance. Baka okay na yan. But after several years, we realize it's not really the ideal kind of a law of anti-political dynasty law. But we would wait again for what? More than 20 years to amend the law, which have proven to be a myth, proven to be unsuccessful. So that's my point. So we are really faced with a difficult task of addressing the nuances of this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman De Lima, and thank you for reminding me how difficult it is for this chairman to navigate all of those possible, those suggested sections among varying and conflicting provisions under the proposed 22 versions of the anti-political dynasty. And I can assure the good Congresswoman that we will be probably, I think it requires for the committee to create a TWG, because it will not be, I think it's impossible for this chair to decide on all of the 22 and then reconcile all of those verses, especially if there are opposing, quite, the polar opposite of one proposal over the other. So I think it's better that we create the TWG, and I'm sure Congresswoman Laila De Lima would also be willing to be part of the TWG without additional compensation, of course. For humanitarian purposes lang po yun. So thank you very much po, Congresswoman De Lima, for your manifestation. Now we're down for the last member who would like to ask our guest from the party list, Ako Bicol, Representative Alfredo Garbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, let me restate my support on the 22 pending bills on anti-political dynasty law, because I see that this is a way of broadening political participation and limiting the powers sa nagkakailang pamilya lamang. And we want this, isang reforma na makatotohanan, pangmatagalan, and something that will survive judicial scrutiny. And I am so thankful that we have the framers of the Constitution here, Commissioner Monsod, Justice Ascuna, and an eminent constitutionalist, Justice Carpio. I have some points that I want to raise, and I want to direct my question to these three eminent constitutionalists. And defining the anti-political dynasty provision, are we providing additional qualification in the elective office, whether national or local? Additional qualification or disqualification? Anyone from Justice Carpio, Justice Ascuna, and Chairman Monsod.
Justice Carpio.
Yeah, it's the Constitution says the state shall prohibit political dynasties. So you are actually crafting a law that prohibits. So it's a disqualification.
Yeah. Justice Ascuna.
Special exception to the constitutional democratic right to choose one's leaders through election. So in any case, since it is embodied in the Constitution itself, whether or not it adds a qualification or disqualification would not constitute an unconstitutional variation to the list of qualifications and disqualifications elsewhere in the Constitution, because the Constitution has to be interpreted as a whole, and therefore the part should be interpreted in a consistent manner so as not to render any part useless. And since this is a very clear command and directive to prohibit political dynasty, any definition by Congress, as long as it does not constitute a undermining of the rule, which is the democratic choice. In other words, you have to leave room for people to choose their leaders within the framework of providing equal opportunity as much as possible. So I don't think there will be a problem there. But I don't think it's constitutionally adding or subtracting qualifications. That is a different category. This is more on equalizing opportunity to public service.
So in the case of the SK Reform Act, Republic Act 10742, Section 10 thereof, we added the political dynasty restriction, and we identified the same as one of the qualification. In fact, it said, an official of the Sangguniang Kabataan, either elected or appointee, must be a citizen of the Philippines, a qualified voter of the Kapatipunan ng Kabataan, a resident of barangay for not less than 1 year immediately preceding election. And it goes by saying must not be related within the second civil degree of consanguinity or affinity. So my question now is, in the local elective office, there's no problem because their qualifications are provided by the Omnibus Election Code and by the Local Government Code. I am now referring to Article 6 and Article 7 of the 1987 Constitution, which refers to the National Elective Office, meaning the President, the Vice President, the members of the Senate, and the House of Representatives. Their qualifications are exclusive and categorical. My question now is, would this anti-political dynasty law, if ever enacted, would override an existing constitutional command or supplant the provisions of Article 6 and Article 7 of the exclusive qualifications of those national elective office, considering that there are cases decided by the Supreme Court in the case of Social Justice Society versus Comelec, wherein the Supreme Court struck down an additional qualification provided for and those candidates running for the Senate. It says a mere addition in the qualification for those running in the Senate being provided by an ordinary legislation is unconstitutional because it violates the supremacy of the Constitution. My question now is, meaning whether an ordinary legislation can override an existing constitutional command.
That's an excellent question, Your Honor. But I believe that in the case of political dynasty, since it is also provided in the Constitution itself that the prohibition must be made by law, the law carrying out that command cannot be considered as an unconstitutional addition of a qualification or disqualification to the provisions in the elsewhere in the Constitution. Because as I said, the Constitution must be construed as a single document, and any apparent contradiction will be reconciled by saying that it is an exception to the general rule. So in the case of the cited by Your Honors, the additional qualification was not provided for in the Constitution itself, but only by legislation. So that was struck down as unconstitutional.
Justice Carpio.
Yes, the Congress has passed laws disqualifying candidates for certain acts. Those acts are not in the Constitution. So you can acts that Congress believe is detrimental could be the cause of disqualification, even if it's not in the Constitution, because that is disqualification. But qualification is another thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Justice Carpio, that there are disqualifications which are grounded on penal disqualification, meaning tied up to due process and conviction. But this one is a blanket exclusion based on status and lineage, meaning the political dynasty restrictions are different because they impose categorical and prospective exclusion unrelated to misconduct or incapacity. What we have right now are penal disqualification that are tied up to convictions or due process, meaning it is always related to meaning you have committed criminal act or your incapacity. But this one is tied up to your lineage. And so what I'm saying is, the manner, should we amend the provisions of Article 6 and Article 7 in order to stand judicial scrutiny, or whether an ordinary legislation would be enough to follow the mandate of the 1987 Constitution?
The Constitution must be read as a whole. It says there the following are the qualifications. In another provision, it says Congress should prohibit political dynasties as may be defined by Congress itself. You have to harmonize. You don't have to amend this first before you can implement this. So it's a matter of harmonization. And it's very clear that this Constitution vested on Congress the power to define a political dynasty which shall be prohibited. I think it's very clear. There's no doubt that Congress has the power to enact the anti-political dynasty law, which effectively disqualify certain people from running. That's why I'm saying it's a disqualification. But you cannot say that because it does not appear in what are the grounds for disqualification. It doesn't mean that it cannot be done anymore, that you have to put there those disqualified under the political dynasty law. You have to read the Constitution as a whole.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Justice Carvey, for that enlightenment. Because what we did in the SK reform law and in the Bangsamoro law is that we inserted it as an additional qualification in those elective offices. So, meaning what will happen now? So this is whether disqualification or qualification, but I am enlightened in your today's elucidation about Constitution should be read in whole, not just in parts, and at least we can now proceed. This committee can now proceed with defining what anti-political dynasty is. Thank you, Justice.
Thank you very much, Congressman Gervin. At this point, there are no other members. In fact, only myself and Congressman Garbin is still around. So again, before we call for a suspension, because I believe for the information of the committee and also for our guest, on the February 12th, that is Thursday, right? This coming Thursday, we will be holding our public hearing. So we like to acknowledge the arrival of our speaker, Speaker Faustino Boji III, sir, one of the authors of the anti-political dynasty measure. Sir, thank you very much for joining us. Yes. Session is hereby suspended.
Okay, tapos na sila, guys. Hi, from Modesto, California. Rica Buzas. Thanks for watching. Mag-greet na tayo dito. Thanks everyone for watching. See you again next time. Bye. Okay, let's shout out for a while. Veloneza Sibunga. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your comments. Bye guys. See you again next time. Tapos na.